The air curdles with a sudden, putrid stench. A shriek tears through the sky, and a shadow darker than storm clouds blots out the sun. Claws like rusted iron slice downward, snatching everything of value, leaving only rot and despair in their wake. You have just met a harpy, the winged terror of Greek myth. Most see them as simple monsters, grotesque hybrids of woman and bird. But what if that terrifying surface hides a profound spiritual truth? By the end of this journey, you will possess a complete esoteric understanding of the harpy, transforming it from a nightmare into a key for personal insight. We will trace their birth from primordial chaos, decode the hidden meanings in their horrific myths, and uncover their startling role in modern occult practice. Were they mindless beasts, or were they actually sacred enforcers of a cosmic law we have forgotten? What part of your own life might their shriek be trying to reach? Their true nature is written in their origin, a story etched not in stone, but in the very fabric of the cosmos. To understand the harpy, you must go back before the gods of Olympus, to the very first moments of creation. They are born from the marriage of two primordial forces. Their father is Thomas, whose name means wonder, but not the gentle kind. He is the awe-inspiring, terrifying wonder of the fathomless sea, the monstrous beauty hidden in the deep abyss. Their mother is Electra, the amber, shining cloud nymph, a being of the luminous, ever-changing sky. From this union of oceanic mystery and celestial radiance, the harpies emerge. This lineage is everything. It tells us they are not random monsters, but elemental spirits, as natural and necessary as a hurricane. Their siblings confirm this sacred, volatile heritage. Their sister is Iris, the rainbow, a bridge of beautiful color after the storm. Their brothers are the Harpii, the swift storm winds themselves. So within a single divine family, you have the entire cycle of atmospheric chaos. The terrifying wind, the beautiful rainbow, and the harpies, who exist in the space between, carrying the storm's consequence. They are born from the raw, untamed elements that existed before order, before civilization, before the comforting rules of Zeus. This makes them archetypes of disruptive power. They are not evil in a human sense. They are a force of nature given winged form. A harpy does not hate you, any more than a tidal wave hates a coastal village. It simply is a manifestation of a fundamental, chaotic truth. When they descend, it is not a personal attack, but the arrival of a primordial law. They are the sudden squall that wrecks a ship, the unexpected drought that withers a crop, the shocking event that tears a carefully built life apart. Their shriek is the sound of the world's inherent unpredictability, breaking through our illusions of control. To face a harpy is to remember that beneath our ordered lives, the primordial chaos still churns, waiting to reclaim what we have taken for granted. These three primordial forces are given names, and in those names lies their true power. The most famous harpies are a terrifying trio, each a distinct facet of the same chaotic law. First is Alecto, a name that translates to the unceasing one. She is not merely fast or fierce. She is relentless. Her pursuit knows no fatigue, her anger no end. Alecto represents the inescapable nature of consequence, the divine punishment that will eventually find its mark no matter how far or fast you run. Think of a guilty conscience that never quiets, or a past mistake whose shadow lengthens with every passing year. That is Alecto's domain. Then there is Celaeno, the Dark One. Her name speaks of obscurity, of storm clouds that blot out the sun. But this darkness is not empty. It is pregnant with meaning. Celaeno embodies the shadowy, often terrifying aspects of fate and prophecy. She is the bearer of bad omens, the whisperer of truths too harsh to bear the light of day. In some tales, she is even described as a prophetess of doom, her very presence a dark revelation of what is to come. Finally, we have Ossipede, the swift flyer. She is the sudden disaster, the bolt from the blue, while Alecto is the chase. Ocypete is the initial, shocking strike. She is the phone call in the middle of the night, the unexpected diagnosis, the financial collapse that arrives without warning. Her speed is not just physical. It is the abruptness with which chaos can enter a ordered life. The ancient poet Hesiod, in his foundational work, the Theogony, names these three directly, placing them among the earliest children of Thaumas and Electra. This is crucial. They are not later inventions, but original, fundamental components of the world's architecture. Their names are not random labels. They are direct expressions of their function. Alecto, Celaeno, and Ocypete are three words for the same terrifying sentence, written by the cosmos itself, relentless shadow and sudden ruin. But to truly feel their presence, you must see them as the ancients did, in all their horrifying detail. Forget the sanitized, almost elegant birdwomen of later art. The original Harpies were creatures of profound physical revulsion. Ancient poets like Virgil describe them in visceral terms. They are not just winged, they are gaunt, with the pale, starved faces of women forever twisted by a ravenous hunger. Their hair is a tangled, filthy mess, often writhing like serpents. Their hands end not in graceful fingers, but in great, curved claws of brass or iron, perpetually stained and sharp enough to tear through flesh and fortune alike. And then there is the stench. Their very presence corrupts the air with a putrid, sickening odor, a miasma so potent it could instantly spoil food and sour wine, turning bounty into rot. This is not random monster design. Every detail is a symbol. The gaunt, human face represents a consciousness consumed by a single, insatiable need. The talons are the instruments of ruthless snatching. The foul smell is the aura of spiritual corruption they carry with them. They are walking, flying embodiments of blight. Yet, in some later Roman art, they are depicted as more beautiful, even alluring winged maidens. This shift is fascinating. It suggests a softening, or perhaps a misunderstanding, of their original cosmic role. The beautiful Harpy is a paradox, a warning wrapped in temptation, which in its own way is even more dangerous. Esoterically, their hybrid form is the key. They are neither fully human nor fully beast. They exist in the liminal space between, making them perfect messengers for forces that operate on multiple levels. The human element connects them to our world of thought, emotion, and conscious action. The avian element connects them to the primal instincts of survival and the higher, detached perspective of the sky. A harpy's punishment, therefore, is never just physical. When they snatch away your food, they are also snatching your sense of security, your future, your very sustenance for the soul. Their shriek is a sound that wounds the ear and the spirit simultaneously. They are the perfect, terrible enforcers because they understand the deep link between our material possessions and our inner state, striking where it hurts most. Their most defining tale unfolds not in a dark cave, but in a sunlit palace, with a king at his own table, the blind prophet Phineus, gifted with perfect sight into the future, made a fatal error. He peered too deeply into the secrets of the gods and shared them too freely with mortals. For this transgression, a punishment was devised that was both brutally simple and exquisitely cruel. Whenever a meal was set before Phineus, the Harpies would descend. With shrieks that shattered the peace of the hall, they would snatch the food directly from his hands and his plates. But they did not merely steal it. They defiled what remained, leaving behind a foul, inedible slime that reeked of their passage. The prophet, a man of great wisdom and stature, was reduced to a state of perpetual, gnawing starvation, trapped in his own wealth, surrounded by plenty he could never consume. This was not a quick death, but a slow, degrading erosion of his very being. The myth makes their function crystal clear. Phineus had misused a divine gift. He took the nectar of celestial knowledge and spilled it into the mortal world for his own glory. The Harpies arrived as the cosmic correctors. Their role was to enforce a spiritual law, the law that sacred sight must be balanced by sacred silence, that profound wisdom cannot be treated as common currency. They were not attacking an innocent man. They were purifying a polluted space. Every time they spoiled his food, they were symbolically spoiling the fruits of his transgression. They created a vacuum, a hunger, not just in his stomach, but in his soul, forcing him to confront the consequences of his actions. Esoterically, Phineus represents corrupted clairvoyance, the psychic sight turned outward for power or praise rather than inward for understanding. His blindness in the physical world contrasts with his inner sight, but that inner sight became a curse because it was ungoverned. The Harpies then become agents of a harsh but necessary karmic reset. They are the universe's method of recalibration, stripping away all comfort and sustenance until the individual is left with nothing but the raw truth of their error. They do not kill him, they force him to need salvation. This is why the heroes, the Argonauts, could intervene. They represent the active, disciplined application of will and virtue. The winged sons of Boreas, the north wind, chase the Harpies away, but they are sworn not to kill them, for the Harpies themselves are divine instruments. Their departure is permitted because balance has been acknowledged, and the plea for clemency has been made. The story of Phineus establishes the Harpy not as a mindless predator, but as a sacred enforcer. They are the storm that cleanses, the hunger that purifies, the inevitable consequence that descends upon those who break the hidden covenants between humanity and the divine. The arrival of the Argonauts brings not brute force, but a sacred bargain into Phineus's hall. Two of their number, the brothers Zetes and Celaeno, are sons of the north wind, Boreas, and they themselves possess shimmering wings. They are the only heroes who could possibly match the Harpies in their own element. When the next meal is laid and the dreaded shrieks echo once more, the brothers take to the air. What follows is a breathtaking chase across the wine-dark sea, a primal contest of speed and endurance between two sets of winged beings. The Harpies, swift as storm gusts, flee towards the west, with the determined Boreads in relentless pursuit. This is no simple monster hunt. The chase itself is a profound allegory. It represents the human impulse, once we recognize our suffering, to outrun the very consequences we have set in motion. We try to flee our past, to suppress our guilt, to leave our mistakes behind us, as if distance could erase cause and effect. The Harpies, embodiments of that effect, cannot be truly outdistanced. They are woven into the fabric of reality itself. The pursuit leads to a cluster of rocky isles, known then as the Floating Islands, later called the Strophates, which means the Islands of Turning. Here, at the very boundary of the known world, something extraordinary happens. Just as Zetes and Celaeno are about to strike the final blow, the divine messenger Iris intervenes. She descends from Olympus, a rainbow cutting through the turbulent sky, and commands the heroes to halt. The Harpies are not to be slain. Instead, a solemn pact is sworn. The sisters will cease their torment of Phineus, and in return, they will be left unmolested in these remote islands, their sacred domain. But before she departs, the darkest of the three, Celaeno, the prophetess of doom, turns her shadowed gaze upon the Argonauts. She issues a grim prophecy. She tells them that they will face a hunger so profound it will force them to eat their own tables before their journey's end. This is not a curse, but a reading of the inevitable karma their own future actions will create. The esoteric meaning of this entire episode is a masterclass in spiritual law. The chase shows that we cannot destroy the forces of consequence, only temporarily evade them. The pact reveals that these forces demand respect and a designated space. They cannot be integrated into our orderly lives. They must be acknowledged as sovereign powers in their own wild realm. By swearing the oath, the Argonauts show wisdom. They use their strength not for annihilation, but for negotiation, establishing a boundary between the human world and the realm of primal retribution. Celaeno's prophecy seals this lesson. It is a reminder that the Harpy's law is universal. Even the heroes, on their sacred quest, are not exempt from the cosmic rules of cause and effect. Their future suffering is already written in the choices they have yet to make. The Harpies retreat, but their principle remains, eternal and watchful. This understanding of the Harpies as cosmic enforcers inevitably leads us to another terrifying trio, their shadowy sisters from the underworld, the Erinyes, also known as the Furies. At first glance, the resemblance is startling. Both are ancient, chthonic spirits, born from the blood of primordial gods. Both are relentless female figures who mete out divine punishment. Both arrive with a terrifying presence that upends the natural order of a life, yet their domains of authority, the specific laws they enforce, could not be more distinct. This distinction is the key that unlocks the Harpy's unique spiritual purpose. The Erinyes are guardians of the most fundamental earthly bonds, the sacred ties of blood kinship. Their wrath is awakened by crimes that tear the family fabric, acts like matricide or patricide. When Orsts kills his mother Clytemnestra, it is the Furies who rise from the darkness, their breath hot and their eyes weeping blood, to hound him across the earth. Their punishment is intimate, personal, and rooted in the deep, visceral connections of the human world. They represent the conscience of the clan, the unyielding voice of ancestral law. The Harpies operate on an entirely different plane. Their concern is not the family, but the cosmos itself. They punish crimes against the natural and divine order, acts of hubris that upset the balance between humanity and the gods. Phineus did not murder a relative. He polluted sacred knowledge. He took a celestial gift meant for a select few and treated it as common gossip. His crime was one of spiritual arrogance, a betrayal of a divine trust. The Harpies descend not for a blood debt, but to cleanse a spiritual stain. This makes them the Furies of the air, where the Erinyes are of the earth, rising from the soil and the underworld to enforce earthly law. The Harpies are born from the sky and sea, descending from the heavens to enforce celestial law. They deal not in the pollution of blood, but in the pollution of intention, of broken oaths to the divine, of corrupted wisdom. Think of it this way. If you betray your family, the Furies will find you in your home, in your dreams, in the very lineage you sought to destroy. But if you betray a sacred truth, if you exploit a spiritual gift for petty power or pride, then the Harpies will find you. They will snatch away the sustenance your arrogance provides, leaving only the bitter taste of consequence. They purify not a bloodline, but a soul's connection to the greater order. This precise niche is what makes them so vital in the Greek spiritual ecosystem. They are the purifiers of sacred knowledge and cosmic law, the storm that washes away the psychic grime of hubris, so that balance, however harshly, may be restored. Their very name holds the key to their elemental truth. Harpy comes directly from the ancient Greek verb harpazein, which means to snatch, to seize, to carry away with violent speed. This is not a poetic description, it is a literal function. In the oldest layers of myth, before they were fully personified as winged women, Harpies were quite simply the storm winds themselves. Homer, in his Odyssey, describes them as whirlwinds that snatch people away, vanishing without a trace. Think of a sudden squall that rips the sail from a ship's mast, or a desert wind that steals the very sand beneath your feet. They were the personification of that terrifying, capricious force of air that could in one moment grant a ship passage, and in the next condemn it to the depths. Their individual names reflect this. Ocypete, the swift flyer, is the gust that arrives without warning. Alecto, the unceasing, is the relentless gale that wears down the coastline over centuries. Celaeno, the Dark One, is the storm cloud that blots out the sun, bringing not just wind, but a shroud of ominous shadow. They are the breath of the world turned furious and predatory. In esoteric thought, this connection to air transforms them from mere weather spirits into something far more intimate and psychological. Air is the element of the mind, of intellect, of communication and thought. It is the invisible medium through which ideas travel, the breath that gives life to words. If the Harpies are storm winds, then esoterically, they become violent storms of thought. They are the mental squall that snatches away your peace in the middle of the night. They are the whirlwind of anxiety that seizes your clarity, leaving your mind scattered and foul. They are the sudden, dark idea that descends out of nowhere, poisoning your outlook just as they poisoned the food of Phineus. When a harpy shrieks, it is the sound of your own internal monologue turning against you, a cacophony of fear and doubt that drowns out all reason. They represent the chaotic, uncontrollable aspect of the intellect. We like to believe our minds are orderly kingdoms, but the Harpies remind us that wild, untamed frontiers exist within. They are the tempest that proves you are not always the master of your own inner skies, a sudden fit of rage, a paralyzing wave of insecurity, a compulsive thought you cannot shake. These are the Harpies at work in the human psyche. They snatch away logic and leave behind the psychic slime of confusion and despair. Even the breath, the very symbol of life and spirit, can become their tool. A harpy's foul stench is a corruption of the air we need to live, just as a panic attack is a corruption of the breath, turning the essential act of inhalation into a terrifying struggle. So the next time you feel a storm brewing in your mind, a sudden squall of emotion that steals your calm, remember the ancient truth. You are not just having a bad day, you are witnessing the flight of the Harpies within, the primordial winds of chaos that have always lived in the space between one thought and the next. The storm winds of the mind find their most permanent expression not in poetry, but in stone. In the ancient city of Xanthos, in what is now modern Turkey, stands a monument that freezes the Harpy's flight in silent marble. Known today as the Harpy Tomb, this towering funerary pillar dates back to the 5th century before the Common Era. Its sides are carved with intricate reliefs, and there, among scenes of offering and tribute, we see them. The Harpies are depicted with the bodies of powerful birds and the heads of serene, almost beautiful women. In their claws or cradled against their bodies, they carry small, childlike human figures. The scene is hauntingly gentle, yet charged with profound ambiguity. Are these winged beings snatching the souls of the deceased, a final, terrifying theft? Or are they bearing these souls tenderly to their rightful place in the afterlife? Archaeology offers no single answer, and that is the entire point. The tomb captures the Harpy at the crossroads of meaning, a perfect symbol for the ultimate transition, death itself. In one interpretation, they are the ultimate punishers, arriving even at the moment of death to seize the very essence of a person. But in another, far more esoteric reading, they are psychopomps, soul guides, not comforting angels, but fierce, necessary escorts through the chaotic winds that separate the world of the living from the realm of the dead. Their terrifying nature becomes not a flaw, but a qualification. Who better to navigate the stormy passage to the underworld than the daughters of the sea and the sky, beings born from primordial chaos? This funerary role solidifies their connection to fate. They are not just involved in mortal life, they are custodians of its conclusion. Other ancient art echoes this solemn duty. On Greek vases, they are sometimes shown in procession with other chthonic deities, their presence marking the scene as part of a sacred, funerary ritual. Their image evolved from Homer's faceless whirlwinds to these sculpted guardians of the tomb, indicating a cultural need to give form to the frightening forces governing our final journey. The small figures they carry are not struggling, they are placid, resigned, or even trusting. This suggests a profound occult truth. The soul must surrender to the chaotic, snatching force of transition to be reborn elsewhere. The harpy, in this light, is the harsh but necessary midwife of the spirit, her talons not tearing, but separating the soul from its earthly anchor. Her shriek is the sound of that severance. So the next time you face a painful ending, a loss that feels like a brutal snatching away, see it through the lens of the Xanthos tomb. Perhaps what feels like a cruel theft by life's storm winds is, in the grander design, a fierce and necessary bearing away, a turbulent escort to whatever lies beyond the horizon of the known. The act of snatching is a violation of natural process. A harvest is reaped, a meal is prepared, a life is lived toward its end. These are cycles with their own rhythm and time. The harpy bypasses all of that. Her talons enact harpazo, a seizure so swift and violent it feels like a tear in the fabric of reality itself. One moment your sustenance is before you, the next it is gone, vanished into the storm-dark sky. This is not theft as a mortal understands it. For a thief leaves an empty space, the harpy's second act is far more profound and far more cruel. She defiles what remains. The table is not simply bare. It is covered in a foul, putrid slime. The food is not just missing. Its very essence is corrupted, rendered poisonous and inedible. This two-step action, violent removal followed by active spoiling, is the complete harpy formula. It is not enough to take your comfort. She must also ensure you cannot find solace in the memory of it or in the hope of its return. The place where bounty once sat becomes a site of revulsion. Esoterically, this is a masterclass in spiritual warfare. The snatching represents the sudden, catastrophic loss of spiritual nourishment. Imagine working for years to cultivate a sense of inner peace, a connection to the divine, a well of creative insight. Then, in what feels like a single afternoon, it is all gone. The silence you meditated into is replaced by a shrieking mental static. The prayer that once felt like a conversation becomes empty words thrown at a silent ceiling. The inspiration that flowed like a spring dries up completely. This is the harpy snatching the food of your soul, but the defilement is the deeper wound. It is the corruption of the sacred space itself. After such a loss, you may try to return to your practices, to sit on your meditation cushion, to open your journal, to kneel at your personal altar. Yet now, that very act feels spoiled. Doubt has fouled the space. A voice whispers that it is all pointless, a self-deception. The tools of your practice feel like hollow props. This is the psychic slime the harpy leaves behind, turning your inner sanctuary into a place of discomfort and distrust. In personal terms, a harpy attack is that period of intense spiritual dryness where every effort to reconnect seems to backfire, where your good intentions are mysteriously undermined, where you feel your own mind and emotions turning against you, spoiling your best efforts from within. The message in this ancient, horrific symbolism is clear. When the sacred is treated as common, when insight is used for pride instead of wisdom, the consequence is not merely deprivation. It is an active poisoning of the very channel through which grace once flowed. The universe, through the harpy, does not just take the gift back. It renders you unable to even approach the altar where it was given, until a profound cleansing occurs. This descent into the soul's own storm leads us to the very edge of the world, to the final, unmoving geography of consequence. While they are born of the open sky, many ancient sources cast the harpies into the deepest pits of the afterlife. Poets like Virgil placed them in the gloom of Tartarus itself, the prison for the most irredeemable titans and the worst of mortal sinners. Other traditions station them as guardians near the entrance to the underworld, perched on jagged cliffs overlooking the river Styx. This seems a contradiction. Creatures of wind and air bound to the stagnant, airless depths. But in the logic of the soul, it makes perfect sense. They are not prisoners there. They are wardens. Their domain is the threshold, the violent moment of transition between states of being. If they snatch the soul at death to bear it away, then the underworld's gate is their natural post. And if their role is to enforce cosmic law, then Tartarus, the repository for those who shattered that law most grievously, is where their work is most concentrated. They become the eternal tormentors of a specific kind of sinner, not the murderer driven by passion, but the figure of profound spiritual betrayal. Think of a king who swore a sacred oath to the gods on his crown and kingdom, only to break it for petty gain. Or an oracle who deliberately twisted a divine prophecy to sow chaos and war. These are crimes that pollute the relationship between humanity and the divine order itself. For such a soul, a harpy's punishment is a grotesque, eternal reflection of their crime. Imagine a spirit forever surrounded by phantom feasts, tables laden with spectral food and drink that perpetually rot and putrefy the moment they reach for it, an endless cycle of tantalizing hunger and immediate revulsion. This is not mere torture, it is a harrowing. The word harrow comes from an Old English term for raiding and plundering, and that is exactly what happens here. The harpies perform a harrowing of the soul, a violent plundering of all its false comforts and corrupted achievements, leaving only the bare, stripped essence to face its truth. In older Christian mysticism, there was a concept called the harrowing of hell, where Christ, after his death, descended to the underworld to liberate the righteous souls held there. The harpies represent a more ancient, impersonal version of this, a harrowing not for salvation, but for purification. Their relentless snatching and spoiling is a cosmic purgative, scouring the soul of its spiritual arrogance until nothing of the original stain remains. This is where their image becomes a vital tool for the modern seeker, in occult meditation or a practice known as pathworking, where one journeys inward through visualized landscapes. Encountering a harpy-like figure is a profound signal. You have reached a threshold within yourself, a gate you cannot pass until you pay a toll. This toll is not gold or flattery. It is the surrender of your psychic garbage. The harpy that blocks your path is the manifestation of a deep-seated pattern, a knot of karma, a buried shame, or a cherished bitterness that you have carried for years. It is the part of you that snatches away your own peace and spoils your own joy. To pass, you cannot fight it, for it is as much a part of you as your own breath. You must allow it to do its work. You must stand in your mind's eye and let its storm winds tear through you. Let its talons seize that rotten, hidden thing you have been protecting, and let it bear that burden away. The experience is rarely pleasant. It feels like a violent purging, a psychic vomiting of old poison, but on the other side of that harrowing, the air is often clearer. The path forward, once blocked by the shadow of those unfaced things, lies open. The harpy, in the deepest chambers of the self, is not a monster to be slain, but a fierce and necessary custodian of your own evolution. She guards the bridge between who you have been and who you must become, and she will only lower her claws when you offer up the last of what is weighing you down. The fierce guardians of the underworld's gate did not vanish with the fall of Rome. Their wings carried them forward, straight into the heart of the medieval imagination, but the journey transformed them utterly. The rich, nuanced archetype of the cosmic enforcer was sanded down, simplified into a cautionary figure for a new age. In the illuminated pages of Christian bestiaries, those encyclopedias of moralizing natural history, the harpy found a new and damning role. Shedding its connection to primordial winds and sacred law, it became a straightforward emblem of sin. Theologians and monks recast it as a demonic hybrid, a literal manifestation of gluttony, and more specifically, ravenous greed. Its endless hunger was no longer a cosmic mechanism, but a personal vice. Its act of snatching and spoiling was framed as the devil's work, a punishment for the morally weak. The harpy was now a monster in a sermon. its image used to terrify the faithful away from the sins of the flesh and the love of material wealth. This was a profound reduction. The complex spiritual corrector, the agent of a harsh but impersonal balance, had been flattened into a cartoonish fiend. Its story was stripped of all context, the tale of Phineus and his divine transgression forgotten, leaving only the terrifying visage to serve a new moral order. The very qualities that made it a sacred force in the Greek world, its relentlessness and its terrifying speed, were now simply attributes of evil. Yet, in a fascinating parallel development, this same terrifying image was being claimed for a very different purpose. While monks decried the Harpy as a demon, knights and noble families were eagerly placing it on their shields and banners. Across Europe, from the Italian city-states to the noble houses of Germany, the Harpy began to appear in heraldry. Here, the symbol underwent another radical reinterpretation. The medieval heralds cared little for Greek spirituality or Christian morality. They sought symbols that conveyed power, lineage, and martial virtue. They saw in the Harpies form a perfect emblem of ferocity in battle. A creature with the face of a woman suggested cunning and discernment, while the body and talons of a bird of prey promised lethal speed and merciless attack. To bear a Harpy on your coat of arms was to declare that you would strike your enemies with swift and terrifying precision, that your vengeance would be as sudden as a swoop from the sky. In some traditions, the heraldic Harpy specifically symbolized the swift punishment of criminals or traitors, a fascinating echo of its ancient role as an enforcer, now applied to earthly, feudal law rather than cosmic balance. We can see this in surviving emblems, like the Harpy that appears on the arms of the city of Nuremberg, or certain Swiss cantons, often depicted with wings spread and claws bared, a guardian of civic order as fierce as it was watchful. This dual fate in the medieval and Renaissance periods is a masterclass in how symbols evolve. The ancient, layered spiritual truth of the Harpy was lost, buried under new religious and cultural priorities. In the bestiary, it became a shallow monster of sin. On the battlefield, it became a shallow symbol of martial might. In both cases, the profound connection to the elements, to fate, and to the soul's harrowing journey was severed. Yet the core archetype, the essence of terrifying, swift power, proved indestructible. It survived the translation. The symbol was repurposed, its spiritual depth traded for immediate, practical meaning. It warns us that when ancient myths are adopted by new cultures, they often shed their original complexity to serve simpler, more immediate needs. The Harpy was no longer a teacher of cosmic law, but it remained, in both pulpit and pennant, an unforgettable image of consequence, arriving on swift, unyielding wings. This transition sets the stage for its most surprising return, not as a demon or a knight's emblem, but as a vital, living presence in the modern quest for self-understanding. This medieval flattening of the symbol, however, could not erase its primal power. The Harpy's true home was never in a bestiary or on a shield, but within the uncharted territory of the human mind. Here, in the realm of modern psychology, the ancient terror finds its most profound and personal meaning. Carl Jung, the pioneering psychiatrist, gave us a framework to understand these persistent inner demons with his concept of the shadow. The shadow is not evil, but the totality of the unconscious personality. All the traits, impulses, and capacities we have denied, repressed, or deemed unacceptable. It is the repository of our hidden rage, our secret envy, our unacknowledged fears, and yes, our capacity for ruthless, snatching behavior. The Harpy is a near-perfect embodiment of this shadow archetype when it turns against us. She is the voice of the inner critic that does not just correct, but savages. She is the sudden, clawing anxiety that snatches your calm in the middle of the night, leaving your mind in a state of spoiled, restless turmoil. She is the wave of guilt that descends without warning, defiling a moment of happiness with the reminder of some past mistake. She is the irrational, destructive thought that swoops into an otherwise peaceful mind, poisoning your self-image. This is the Harpy within, and her function is brutally similar to her mythological role. She enforces a personal, psychic law. When we live out of alignment with our own deeper truth, when we betray our values for convenience, or silence our intuition for approval, we commit a kind of internal hubris. We pollute our own inner sanctum, and the Harpy, as the agent of our unconscious, arrives to collect the debt. Her shriek is the sound of that inner conflict becoming audible. Her talons are the sharp pangs of regret and self-sabotage that tear at our achievements. The foul slime she leaves is the lingering sense of worthlessness that can follow a failure, making it impossible to even try again. She is not an external monster, but the part of ourselves we have exiled and which now returns, winged and furious, to demand recognition. The myth gives us the precise instructions for how to deal with this force. We cannot kill the Harpy any more than the Argonauts were permitted to. She is a divine, meaning necessary, part of the whole self. To try to annihilate her through sheer force of will, to suppress those feelings entirely, is to wage a war you cannot win. It only gives her more power, sending her deeper into the shadows where she gathers strength for a more devastating attack later. The solution is the path of the Boreads, the path of sacred negotiation. Jung called this process integration. It involves turning toward the Harpy, not fleeing from her. It means in a moment of quiet self-reflection, allowing that critical, anxious, or guilty voice to speak, and listening to what it is actually saying beneath the shrieking. Often, you will find it is pointing, in its harsh and distorted way, to a real wound, a broken promise you made to yourself, a boundary you failed to uphold, a talent you have neglected. The Harpy torments you about your procrastination not because she hates you, but because you have betrayed your own creative spirit. She claws at your social anxiety because you have abandoned your authentic self in favor of a mask. Her function is to highlight, through pain, where you are out of alignment with your own natural law. Making a pact with this inner Harpy means acknowledging her message. It means saying, I hear you. I see the chaos you are revealing. I accept that I have created this spoilage through my own actions or inactions. This acknowledgement is the oath that stops the torment. It does not make the Harpy vanish, but it transforms her from a predator in the sky to a resident of your own inner islands, the strophates of your psyche. She becomes a sentinel, a warning system. The next time you feel her shadow fall over your mood, you can recognize it not as a random attack, but as a signal. She is showing you where you are hungry, where you have allowed something precious to be taken, or where you are feeding yourself psychic food that has long since spoiled. This integration is the harrowing, the purification. It is allowing her fierce winds to scour away the illusions, so that what remains is sturdier, truer, and finally at peace. That inner negotiation with our personal shadows is a private magic, but the archetype of the Harpy also holds a formal place in the modern temple of ceremonial practice. Within the structured world of occult ritual, these winged terrors are not often summoned for gentle blessings. You will not find a Harpy invoked to bring prosperity or heal a broken heart, for that would be like calling a hurricane to water a single flower. Their inherent nature is one of violent removal and purification, a force too chaotic and severe for most works of attraction or comfort. Where they do appear, it is typically in the realm of what is grimly called aggressive magic, in rituals of cursing or binding designed to snatch away an enemy's resources, spoil their plans, or harry their peace of mind with relentless psychic torment. In such a context, the practitioner is essentially attempting to direct the Harpy's storm toward another, casting themselves in the role of a vengeful god, sending divine punishment. Yet this is a perilous path, for it requires the magician to fully embody the chaotic principle they seek to unleash, with all the karmic backlash that implies. The story of Phineus stands as an eternal warning here. To misuse a harpy's power for a petty grievance is to repeat his sin, to take a cosmic force and degrade it into a tool for personal spite. The practitioner risks becoming the very target of the law they sought to weaponize, finding their own spiritual sustenance mysteriously snatched and spoiled by the very energies they thought they controlled. Far more common and far wiser is the use of the harpy archetype in the essential act of banishment. Before any sacred work can begin, the ritual space must be cleansed of stray thoughts, negative influences, and psychic debris. This is not just sweeping dust from a floor. It is clearing the turbulent winds of the mind itself. Here, the harpy becomes a powerful ally. A magician might close their eyes and vividly visualize these winged forms descending not upon a feast, but upon the cluttered astral space around them. They see the harpy's talons snatching up tangled skeins of doubt, clouds of ambient anger, and the lingering residues of old arguments. They watch as these psychic pollutants are carried shrieking into the void, borne away on dark wings to be dissolved in the chaotic ether from which they came. The foul slime they leave behind is not a curse in this context, but the visible sign of purification, a symbolic residue that is then itself ceremonially cleansed with incense, salt, or flame. In this role, the harpy is recognized for what it has always been, a force of nature tasked with enforcing a clean slate. The ritualist is not commanding the harpy so much as aligning with its natural function, inviting it to do within the microcosm of the temple what it does in the macrocosm of fate, remove that which corrupts the sacred space. This leads to the paramount ethical consideration of working with such a violent archetype. The core principle is one of profound respect and precise intent. You must know with absolute clarity what you are calling up and why. Invoking a harpy for banishment is a specific operation, like calling a master surgeon to remove a tumor. You define the target precisely, the psychic debris, the negative influence, the chaotic thought form. You do not invoke the storm winds to blow vaguely, for they will take everything, including your own focus and stability. Furthermore, you must provide a clear exit, a symbolic strawfades to which the force can retreat once its work is done. In ritual, this is often a designated direction, a burning parchment, or a spoken command of dismissal. Failure to do this is to leave a chaotic entity loitering in your psychic field, and the results are as predictable as leaving a window open in a hurricane. The practitioner must also examine their own heart. Are you acting from a place of balanced justice, like the cosmos correcting Phineus, or from a place of wounded pride and personal vengeance? The harpy, as an elemental force, does not care about your human rationale, but it will amplify the energy you feed it. If your intent is polluted by malice, the harpy's purification will turn upon you first, snatching away your own moral center and leaving the slime of guilt in its place. To work with a harpy is to stand, for a moment, in that liminal space between human desire and cosmic law. It is to acknowledge a power far older and wilder than our personal dramas, and to ask, with perfect humility and clean hands, for its service in sweeping our inner temple clear. It is the ultimate test of the magician's wisdom, to harness the storm without being destroyed by it, and to release it without a trace of attachment once the cleansing winds have passed. This synthesis of roles, from cosmic enforcer to psychological shadow, reveals their ultimate function. The harpy is the daemon of sudden karma. In the occult sense, a daemon is not a demon, but a spiritual force, an intermediary entity that carries out a specific divine function. The harpy's function is the immediate, shocking enforcement of natural and divine law. This is karma not as a slow, grinding wheel, but as a lightning strike. It is consequence delivered not over a lifetime, but in a single, devastating moment that tears the fabric of your reality. This is what fundamentally separates them from their underworld sisters, the Furies. The Furies represent the karma of blood, a slow, relentless haunting that unravels a family line across generations. Their punishment is a creeping vine, a poison that works through time. The Harpies' punishment is a guillotine. It is the karma of broken cosmic trust, of spiritual hubris, and it demands an instant, violent correction. Think of the difference between a chronic illness and a heart attack. One wears you down over years. The other changes everything in an instant. The Furies are the chronic illness of the soul, born from deep, familial sins. The Harpies are the cardiac arrest of the spirit, caused by a sudden, catastrophic failure in your connection to a higher order. Modern life is full of Harpy moments, though we rarely name them as such. It is the trusted business partner who empties the company accounts overnight, vanishing and leaving ruin in their wake. It is the public figure whose career is ended not by a long scandal, but by a single, unforgivable remark caught on a hot microphone. It is the sudden diagnosis that arrives during your annual physical, the phone call that informs you of a tragic accident, the natural disaster that reduces a lifetime of work to rubble in minutes. These events feel like a harpy has swooped from a clear sky. They snatch away your stability, your identity, your future plans, and they often spoil what remains, leaving you unable to even look at the pieces without revulsion. The initial reaction is to see this as random, senseless cruelty, a malicious twist of fate, but the esoteric perspective of the Harpy reframes it entirely. This is not randomness. It is a violent course correction from the universe itself. It is the cosmos declaring, with terrifying finality, that the path you were on is no longer tenable. The foundation you build upon was spiritually corrupt, and the entire structure must be torn down before it collapses and takes more with it. The Harpy's shriek is the sound of that foundation cracking. Her talons are the instrument of that demolition. The event feels like an attack because it is, an attack on your illusions, your complacency, your arrogance. It demands, above all else, immediate and total attention. You cannot ignore a Harpy. Her work is too loud, too destructive, too visceral. She forces a spiritual realignment by first destroying the old alignment completely. There is no gentle nudge here, no whispered suggestion. It is a divine eviction notice, served with extreme prejudice. Understanding misfortune through this lens does not make it hurt less, but it can rob it of its power to shatter meaning. It transforms a personal tragedy into a moment of profound, if brutal, dialogue with the universe. The question ceases to be, why did this happen to me? And becomes, what law did I violate? What truth did I ignore? What aspect of my soul was so out of balance that it required this cataclysm to restore order? The Harpy does not come for the innocent. She comes for those who, like Phineus, have misused a sacred gift or built their lives on a foundation of spiritual pride. Her sudden karma is the universe's most severe and urgent teaching tool, a lesson written not in ink, but in lightning, meant to be learned in a single, unforgettable flash. To map these forces onto a practical system, we must place the Harpies within the symbolic language of Western esotericism. Their primary elemental correspondence is undeniably air, born as they are from storm winds and operating through the violent snatching of thought and breath. Yet their lineage complicates this purity. Their father, Thomas, is a god of the sea, anchoring them deeply in the element of water, the realm of the unconscious, emotion, and primordial mystery. Their chthonic roles, as guardians of tombs and agents of defilement, tie them just as firmly to earth, the element of manifestation, decay, and finality. They are a trinity of elements, a whirlwind born from the sea that scorches the land. Planetary rulership points to two severe archetypes. Mars, with its explosive energy, sudden violence, and purifying fire, captures their swift, aggressive action. Yet Saturn, the great restrictor, the lord of karma, time, and inevitable consequence, may be an even more profound fit for their role as enforcers of cosmic law. Their metal is iron, cold, unyielding, and sharp, the substance of their legendary talons and the chains of fate they represent. In the sacred space of a ritual circle, they do not belong at the cardinal points of stability. Their place is in the liminal, chaotic corners, off in the northwest, the direction of descending darkness and unpredictable winds, where structure begins to break down. For a visual anchor, consider this simple framework of correspondences: element, air, water, earth, planet, Mars and Saturn, metal, iron, direction, northwest. Stage, Negrito. This final term, Negrito, unlocks their ultimate alchemical meaning. In the great work of transforming the soul, the first stage is the blackening, the putrefactio. This is not a gentle melancholy, but a violent, chaotic breakdown. The base matter of the self, with all its impurities and illusions, is subjected to a corrosive, rotting process. It is thrown into disarray, its components separated and spoiled. Sound familiar? This is the precise operation of the Harpy. Her descent initiates the soul's Negrito. She snatches away the false comforts, the corrupted wisdom, the psychic sustenance we thought was pure. She leaves behind the foul slime of despair and disintegration. In alchemical terms, she is the agent who forces the materia prima into a state of black chaos, because only from that utter dissolution can the subsequent stages of whitening and reddening, of purification and enlightenment, possibly emerge. To encounter a Harpy in your life, therefore, is to be plunged into your own personal Negrito. It is a terrifying, necessary descent into the blackness where all old forms are broken down, so that something entirely new and far more authentic can eventually be forged from the ashes. So when that shrieking wind begins to howl at your own door, what can you do? The answer is not to wage war against the storm, but to build a shelter so strong that its winds cannot find a way inside. Your first line of defense is a ward, a symbolic boundary that declares your space under a different, more harmonious law. You might call upon the imagery of the Boreads, those winged sons of the north wind who chase the Harpies with swift, decisive action. A simple drawing or symbol representing swift resolution, placed near the entrance to your home or workspace, can serve as a psychic reminder to address problems quickly before they fester and attract chaotic attention. Alternatively, invoke their sister Iris, the rainbow, the goddess of peaceful communication and bridges. Her symbol, an arc of color, reminds you to seek clarity and reconciliation in your dealings with others, ensuring your own words and actions do not become the storm clouds that summon darker forces. These are not magical talismans in a fantasy sense, but focal points for your intention, anchors for the kind of energy you wish to cultivate and the kind you wish to deflect. Once your symbolic boundaries are set, you must clear the atmosphere itself. Remember, the Harpy is a force of corrupted air. Your goal is to purify that element, to reclaim the mental and spiritual space around you. This can be done with beautiful simplicity. The sound of a clear, ringing bell shatters stagnant energy, its vibrations acting like a gust of fresh wind to disperse psychic clutter. Fanning the air with a feather, especially one found in nature, mimics the action of gentle, guiding winds pushing out the foul and the frenzied. Then, introduce sacred smoke. Burning resins like frankincense or herbs like sage has been a cross-cultural practice for millennia for a reason. The smoke does not just smell pleasant, it carries your intention of purification upward. As you watch the tendrils rise, visualize them seeking out any lingering traces of that Harpy-like miasma, the anxiety, the resentment, the spiritual rot, and carrying it away, transforming it into harmless ash. You are literally clearing the air, creating a vacuum that can then be filled with calm and focus. Yet no amount of external cleansing will hold if the source of the attraction remains within. This is the most challenging and crucial step. You must turn the mirror on yourself with ruthless honesty and ask the Phineus question: where have I, perhaps unknowingly, betrayed a sacred trust? This is not about grand crimes, but subtle hubris. Have you used a personal insight or skill for petty gain or to manipulate others? Have you made promises to yourself about your health, your creativity, or your growth that you have consistently broken? Have you treated a relationship, or even your own body, with a carelessness that borders on disrespect? This internal audit, it is the true ward. The harpy is magnetized to spiritual debt. By identifying and sincerely working to amend these personal betrayals of trust, you settle the account. You take the food off the table before the snatching claws can even descend. Ultimately, protection lies in securing your sustenance, your spiritual practices, your core values, your moments of quiet integrity. These are your true nourishment. Make them invisible to the storm. Do not perform your good works for show. Do not use your meditation as a badge of superiority. Do not turn your ethics into a public performance. Keep the sacred sacred by holding it close and practicing it with quiet consistency. When your sense of worth is fed by an internal wellspring of action aligned with your truth, no external event can truly spoil it. A harpy can snatch away your job, but it cannot snatch the skill and dignity you cultivated there. It can disrupt a relationship, but it cannot corrupt the self-respect you maintained within it. The goal is to become like the Argonauts who made a pact, not victims who were pursued. Acknowledge the chaotic winds as part of the world's fabric, but through wards, cleansing, and profound self-honesty, learn to hear their shriek not as a prelude to your ruin, but as a distant storm, passing safely over a shelter you have built, stone by stone, from the inside out. Their wings cast a shadow far beyond the shores of the Aegean Sea. While the Greeks named them harpies, cultures across the globe have looked into the heart of a howling gale and seen similar terrors taking shape. This is not a coincidence, but a testament to a shared human experience. When confronted with the raw, capricious violence of a storm, our ancestors instinctively gave it a face, a form, and a frightening purpose. The harpy is Greece's specific answer to a universal question: what monstrous force rides the winds that destroy our homes and spoil our harvests? Look to the dense forests of Slavic folklore, and you will meet the Vila. These ethereal spirits of the air and woods are often depicted as beautiful, winged maidens, yet they possess a ferocious, tempestuous nature. They control the winds and storms, and they are known to punish those who break their laws, typically hunters, who kill for sport, or men who betray oaths, with sudden illness, misfortune, or by whipping the sky into a vengeful frenzy. They share the harpy's connection to wind, their hybrid nature, and their role as enforcers of a natural moral code, though their beauty presents a more deceptive, alluring facade. Journey east to the mountains of Japan, and the Tengu awaits. These long-nosed, winged goblins are masters of the mountain winds, often depicted causing devastating whirlwinds or storms. Like the harpies, they are tricksters and punishers, particularly of the proud, the corrupt, and the arrogant. They would snatch people away into the sky, disorient them in deep forests, and spoil the sanctity of holy places, mirroring the harpy's role in snatching sustenance and defiling what is sacred. They serve as harsh teachers, using chaotic, punishing methods to correct spiritual imbalance, a function eerily close to the harpy's harrowing of the soul. Perhaps the most striking parallel comes from ancient Mesopotamia, in the form of Pazuzu. This demonic king of the wind demons was a hybrid monster with a canine face, scaly body, eagle's talons, and wings. He was invoked not as a force of pure evil, but as a necessary, terrifying power to drive away other, more pestilential demons, particularly those causing sickness and famine. Pazuzu brought the destructive desert wind, the simoom, which could scorch crops and parch throats. Yet this very destructiveness made him a useful counterforce against other maladies. Here we see the same complex duality as the Harpy, a being of undeniable terror whose violent nature could, in the right context, serve a purgative, protective function. From the Vela to the Tengu to Pazuzu, the pattern is unmistakable. Humanity, in its separate cradles, repeatedly conceived of the storm's power as a winged, often hybrid entity that serves as a cosmic corrector. These beings are rarely mindless forces of nature. They are intelligent agents of punishment, cleansing, or harsh instruction. They arrive on the wind to enact a form of brutal justice, snatching health, spoiling fortune, or harrying the spirit. This cross-cultural thread reveals the Harpy not as a singular Greek invention, but as a brilliant local expression of a global archetype, the punishing storm spirit. Our ancestors understood that the chaos of a tempest, while destructive, often clears the air for new growth. They personified that terrifying, renewing power into a mythic being that could explain sudden tragedy, enforce social and spiritual laws, and ultimately make the incomprehensible wrath of nature feel like part of a moral, if severe, order. The Harpy's shriek, therefore, joins a chorus of howls and gusts from around the ancient world, all singing the same unsettling truth, that the wind which gives us breath can also take everything away, and that within that terrifying paradox lies a form of sacred, if ruthless, law. That dark prophecy from the island of Turning holds a secret about the Harpies themselves. Celaeno, the shadowed sister, did not merely curse the Argonauts, she read their future with terrifying accuracy. They would, as she foretold, be driven by such hunger that they would consume their own tables, a prophecy that came true in a bizarre, symbolic feast. This reveals a staggering paradox at the heart of these monsters. They are not just snatchers and spoilers. They are also oracles. They defile the present, but they reveal the future. Their violence and their vision are two sides of the same coin. Celaeno's name means the Dark One, but her darkness is not empty. It is a space of profound, if terrifying, sight. She sees the truth that the light of day, with all its comforting illusions, cannot show. In an esoteric sense, this makes the Harpy a brutal kind of truth-teller. The very act of snatching away your comfort, of spoiling your plans, is what strips you bare enough to see reality. The storm winds they ride do not just destroy, they clear away the fog. Think of a life crisis that feels like a Harpy attack. A sudden job loss snatches away your financial security and professional identity. A painful betrayal spoils the trust you had in a relationship. In the immediate chaos, it feels like pure destruction, a defilement of everything you built. But within that violent purification, a difficult truth often starts to whisper. The job you lost was slowly draining your soul, and you had ignored the signs for years. The relationship that ended was built on a foundation of compromise that eroded your sense of self. The Harpy, in her horrific way, did not attack you. She attacked the illusion you were living. She defiled the falsehood so you could no longer stomach it. Her shriek is the sound of that comfortable lie finally cracking apart. Embracing the Harpy phase of a crisis means stopping the fight against the storm for just a moment and listening to what the chaos is trying to say. It means asking, in the midst of the pain, what truth is this violence forcing me to see? What reality was I refusing to acknowledge while I was still comfortably seated at my old table? Celaeno's prophecy was dark, but it was not a lie. It was a map of the inevitable consequence of the hero's own journey, a truth they needed to hear to complete their quest. Our personal Harpies offer the same brutal service. The anxiety that claws at your sleep is often pointing directly at the unresolved issue you keep avoiding. The wave of anger that seems to come from nowhere is frequently a signal that a boundary has been trampled too many times. These internal harpies are defiling your peace to reveal a truth about your needs, your values, or your path. They spoil the pleasant fiction that everything is fine, because fine is often the enemy of true. To heed the dark prophecy is not to submit to despair, but to accept the painful clarity that arrives on the wings of disaster. It is to understand that sometimes the only way to find your true direction is to have every false landmark violently stripped away, leaving you standing in the clearing of raw, undeniable reality. The harpy does not just take, she reveals, and what she reveals, though often harsh, is the only ground solid enough to build upon once the storm finally passes. Dante Alighieri saw them not in the open sky, but in the twisted branches of a dead wood. In his Inferno, the harpies find a new and terrible home in the seventh circle, within the wood of the suicides. Here, their role shifts profoundly. They are no longer enforcers of cosmic law against hubris, but the eternal tormentors of those who enacted violence upon themselves. Perched in the poisonous trees that house the souls of suicides, they feast upon the leaves, causing the branches to bleed and the souls within to cry out in perpetual pain. Dante explicitly connects their foul stench to the atmosphere of despair, writing that their broad wings, their bellies feathered, and their clawed feet make the trees cry out in woe. This is a pivotal reinterpretation. The harpy becomes an emblem of self-directed violence and the spiritual corruption that follows. Their defilement is now internalized, a perpetual spoiling of one's own sacred vessel, the body, and the soul's connection to life itself. This medieval vision cemented their association with a very specific kind of despair, far removed from their original function as celestial correctors. Centuries later, William Shakespeare would invoke them with a different kind of theatrical power. In The Tempest, the spirit Ariel, at the command of Prospero, disguises himself as a harpy to confront the usurping King Alonso and his court. He appears suddenly, claps his wings upon the table, and with a quaint device makes the banquet they are about to eat vanish. He then delivers a thunderous speech, accusing them of their sins and branding them as men of sin. This scene is a direct, conscious echo of the Phineus myth. Shakespeare understands the archetype perfectly, the harpy as the being who snatches away false sustenance to force a confrontation with guilt. Ariel as harpy is not a mindless monster, but a purposeful instrument of psychic reckoning, a manifestation of conscience arriving on swift wings to spoil the feast of their unexamined lives. Yet, as we move into the modern era, this profound complexity begins to fade. In contemporary fantasy art, video games, and animation, the harpy undergoes a dramatic transformation. It is often softened, sexualized, or simply made generic. A prime example is Disney's animated film Hercules. The harpies there are minor, comical henchmen for the god Hades, screeching bird women with no depth, no connection to storm winds or spiritual law. They are slapstick monsters, their terror diluted into cartoonish annoyance. In much fantasy role-playing art, the harpy is frequently depicted as a seductive, often scantily clad hybrid, emphasizing wild, untamed femininity, but stripping away the ancient, gaunt starvation and the aura of putrid blight. She becomes a dangerous beauty, a trope, rather than a force of impersonal cosmic justice. What is lost in this translation is everything that gave the archetype its unique power, its specific spiritual niche. The modern harpy rarely punishes hubris, rarely enforces a divine covenant, and almost never serves as a harrower of the soul. It becomes just another flying monster in the bestiary, a creature to be slain for experience points, its connection to the elements, to fate, and to the psyche severed. What is gained, perhaps, is accessibility and a different kind of symbolic shorthand, representing freedom, wildness, or a threatening allure, but this comes at a great cost. When we reduce the harpy to a decorative monster, or a simplistic symbol, we lose a vital map for understanding a specific kind of crisis. We lose the language for that sudden, devastating event that feels less like a random tragedy and more like the universe itself delivering a violent, corrective verdict. The ancient Harpy taught that some suffering has meaning, that it is a brutal dialogue with a higher order. The modern Harpy, in its diluted form, offers no such difficult wisdom. It simply shrieks and attacks, a symptom of chaos rather than its profound and terrifying messenger. This cultural flattening asks us a crucial question in making these ancient terrors more palatable for entertainment. Have we quietly disarmed one of the most potent tools our myths ever gave us for navigating the storms of consequence? The Strophates are more than just a forgotten island chain on an ancient map. Their very name, the Islands of Turning, holds the entire esoteric lesson of the Harpy myth. This is not a random place of exile. It is a sacred geography of the soul. The chase ends here, at the boundary of the known world, because this is where all chases of consequence must ultimately end, at the precipice of a choice. The hero cannot kill the Harpy, and the Harpy cannot continue its torment unchecked. A turn must be made. This moment of forced negotiation is the core of spiritual survival. In your own life, the Strophates manifest as that raw, painful stillness after the storm has hit. The job is gone, the relationship has shattered, the health crisis has been diagnosed. The initial shock, the shrieking chaos, has passed. Now you stand amid the wreckage, and the world holds its breath. This is the turning point. You have two paths before you, though only one leads out of the cycle. The first path is to refuse the turn. You can try to rebuild the exact same life on the same cracked foundation. You can seek the same kind of job in the same toxic industry, pursue the same type of partner with the same unresolved patterns, or ignore the warning signs from your body and press on as before. This is the path of Phineus before the Argonauts arrived, a path of perpetual, gnawing starvation, where every attempt at nourishment is snatched and spoiled anew. The Harpies, in this case, are not gone. They are simply waiting for you to set the table again so they can descend. The second path, the true turn, is the path of the pack. It is the conscious, often humbling decision to change course. This is not a surrender to the monster, but a profound negotiation with the principle it represents. You must ask, what law did I break? What sacred trust, with myself or with life, did I violate? The answer becomes the terms of your new treaty. It might mean turning away from a career that fed your pride but starved your spirit. It might mean turning toward a difficult apology or a necessary ending you have long avoided. It might mean turning inward to finally address the anxiety or anger you have been feeding with distraction. The pact you swear is a promise to live differently, to respect the boundary the Harpy enforces. In return, the torment ceases. The chaotic force retreats to its designated islands within you, becoming a watchful sentinel rather than an active predator. This turn is not a single dramatic gesture, but a slow, deliberate reorientation of your entire being. It is the sailor adjusting the sails to a new wind, not fighting the gale, but using its power to reach an unknown shore. The Strophates teach us that peace is not found in the absence of storm winds, but in learning to navigate them. We cannot destroy the chaotic parts of our fate or our psyche, but we can agree to their sovereignty over their own wild domains. We can turn, and in that turning, we transform a chase that would destroy us into a journey that, however unexpectedly, sets us free. Gray cloth drapes a small table, and the air carries the faint, recorded sound of a distant, moaning wind. This is your Strophates, your island of turning, created not in stone but in intention. Close your eyes and let the sound fill the space around you. Feel the shift, the boundary forming between your daily life and this inner landscape where truths are laid bare. Breathe into that wind, not against it. Now, in the space behind your eyelids, let the form coalesce. Do not force an image from a storybook. Ask your own psyche to show you the harpy that has been circling your life. Perhaps it is not a winged woman at all. Maybe it is a swirling vortex of frantic thoughts, a cold, heavy weight on your chest, or a sharp, whispering voice that repeats your failures. It could be the looming, faceless shape of a financial worry or a health fear. See it clearly. Notice its details, the texture of its presence, the unique quality of its shriek within your mind. This is your personal agent of consequence, the manifestation of the storm you have been fleeing. The instinct will be to tense, to build walls, to scream back. Resist it. This is the heart of the ritual. Instead of fighting, you must do the bravest thing imaginable. You must speak to it from a place of still curiosity, not defiance. Ask the question Phineus was forced to learn. What law have I transgressed? Let the question hang in the psychic wind. Listen not with your ears, but with your gut. The answer may not come in words. It might be a sudden, painful memory, a flush of shame about a promise broken, or a clear vision of a relationship where you tolerated disrespect. It could be the simple, stark realization that you have been living out of alignment with your own deepest values, feeding on the spoiled food of procrastination or resentment. The Harpy's message is always about the corrupted covenant. Next, ask, what truth have I spoiled? This reveals the defilement. Perhaps you spoiled your own creative truth by never sharing your work. Maybe you spoiled the truth of a friendship by speaking in gossip, or spoiled the truth of your own body by ignoring its signals. The Harpy's foul slime is the residue of that self-betrayal. Acknowledge what you hear or feel. Whisper it aloud if you can. I see that I broke my promise to myself. I understand that I used my anger to manipulate. I recognize that I treated my time as worthless. This acknowledgement is the beginning of the pact. You are not begging the Harpy to leave. You are negotiating from the new ground of honesty. Now make your promise, your sacred oath for this island. It must be specific and actionable. Not I will be better, but I will dedicate 1 hour each Sunday to planning my week with respect. Not I will stop worrying, but I will write down my fears each night and then consciously release them. This is your treaty. You are defining the new law you will live by, the law that respects the boundary the Harpy guards. Visualize the form before you shifting. The shrieking may soften. The chaotic vortex may slow. It does not vanish, but it retreats, settling onto a psychic perch, becoming a watchful sentinel rather than an active attacker. You have made the turn. Now, gently bring your awareness back. Feel your feet firmly on the floor. Take 3 deep, cleansing breaths, inhaling calm and exhaling any residual tension. Thank the space you created and consciously step back across its boundary, carrying the terms of your pact with you. The ritual is closed, but the work, the true harrowing and rebuilding, has just begun. That ritual of confrontation is not an optional exercise. It is the central mandate of the entire path. The Harpy, in its rawest form, is the ultimate symbol of the shadow. Think about its defining traits. It is undeniably ugly, a vision of gaunt starvation and foulness. Its actions are violent, a sudden snatching and a cruel spoiling. Its presence is wholly disruptive, tearing apart the orderly feast of a life. And most critically, it feels entirely external, a monstrous force that descends from the outside to punish us. This is the perfect camouflage for the shadow, our own denied aspects, the parts of ourselves we find unacceptable, rarely appear in the mirror as gentle suggestions. They manifest as external crises, as cruel bosses, as betraying partners, as sudden bad luck, as a world that seems inexplicably set against us. We point to the sky and say, "A harpy did this to me." But the esoteric truth, the unmasking, reveals a far more challenging reality. The harpy's torment, without exception, points to an internal imbalance. Its shriek is the amplification of a whisper you have been ignoring within yourself. Its talons snatch away only what you were already in danger of losing through your own misalignment. The spoiled slime it leaves is the tangible result of a truth you have allowed to fester. True spiritual progress, therefore, is not about building better wards against external monsters. It is about developing the courage to turn toward the storm and say, "I recognize you. You are mine." The work begins when you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What within me is happening as this?" Perhaps the harpy that snatches your financial stability is mirroring your own deep-seated belief in scarcity, or your pattern of sabotaging success. Maybe the harpy that defiles your relationships is showing you how you first spoiled them with insecurity or unspoken resentment. The relentless inner critic that torments your every move, that is a harpy you have fed and housed within your own mind. Owning this is profoundly difficult. It is easier to be a victim of a monster than to acknowledge you are the keeper of the beast. But this ownership is the only path to wholeness. Integration does not mean becoming the harpy, becoming cruel or chaotic. It means reclaiming the power it represents. That snatching force, when integrated, becomes your ability to set swift, clean boundaries, to remove toxic influences from your life with decisive speed. That spoiling instinct transforms into the discernment to walk away from situations that would corrupt your integrity. The shrieking criticism, once owned, can be honed into a keen inner guidance system that alerts you to real hypocrisy or sloppiness in your own work. You neutralize the harpy's external power by realizing it never had any to begin with, not that was not yours. The storm does not vanish, but you are no longer a helpless figure in an open field. You become the watcher in the sturdy tower, understanding the wind's nature, respecting its power, and knowing it cannot touch the core of who you are. The mask of the monster falls away, and you are left facing not a fiend, but a forgotten, fierce, and necessary part of your own soul, waiting to be brought in from the cold. Their role as cosmic enforcers forces a startling question about their most infamous act. We have always assumed the harpies defiled the prophet's feast out of pure malice, a simple act of spiteful punishment. But what if their spoiling was not an attack, but a defense? Consider the crime of Phineus once more. He was not a thief or a murderer. He was a seer who betrayed a sacred trust. He took the pristine, dangerous knowledge of the gods, a food for the spirit, and spilled it into the mortal world like common grain. In doing so, he corrupted it. He made the mysterious mundane, the sacred profane. When the harpies descended, they were not just punishing him, they were performing an emergency quarantine. By snatching and spoiling his physical food, they were creating a living barrier around the spiritual food he had already polluted. They were guarding the god's secrets from further dissemination by a vessel that had proven itself unclean. Every time they turned his meal to slime, they were sending a deafening, visceral message. You are not fit to handle nourishment of any kind, physical or spiritual, until you have atoned for spoiling the highest feast of all. This reframes them from mindless punishers to dedicated, if terrifying, protectors. They become the guardians of the mysteries. In ancient Greek tradition, the mysteries, like those at Eleusis, were profound spiritual rites where secret knowledge was imparted only to initiates who had undergone rigorous purification. To speak of these secrets openly was a grave sacrilege. The harpies enforced this principle on a cosmic scale. Their shriek is the sound of the boundary between the profane and the sacred being violently upheld. Their foul stench is the psychic marker of a contaminated zone, warning all others to stay away from a truth that has been mishandled. Their terrifying visage, then, is not random monster making. It is the ultimate keep out sign etched onto the door of certain spiritual realities. Some truths are not meant to be pretty or palatable to the unprepared mind. Their very form declares that the path to these truths is not one of gentle enlightenment, but may first pass through a harrowing confrontation with everything we find grotesque and repellent within ourselves and the universe. They protect the mystery by ensuring that only those who can face the harpy within, who can withstand the storm of deconstruction, will ever reach the still center where the secret actually resides. Think of a potent, dangerous virus kept in a maximum security lab. The lab is not beautiful. It is stark, sterile, and sealed with intimidating locks and biohazard warnings. These are not features of malice, but of profound responsibility. The harpies are the biohazard symbols of the spirit world. They manifest around leaked secrets and corrupted wisdom to contain the damage and prevent the unprepared from stumbling into realms that could spiritually incinerate them. In this light, their pursuit of Phineus was a relentless containment protocol. They were not trying to destroy him, but to isolate the breach he represented. This interpretation casts their entire mythology in a new, solemn duty. They are the sworn guardians of occult integrity, the fierce custodians who ensure that hidden wisdom does not become cheapened, weaponized, or turned into a party trick for mortal vanity. They remind us that the universe has a vested interest in keeping its deepest truths hidden behind a wall of terrifying but necessary guardians. We began with a shriek in a darkening sky and the silhouette of a monster. We end not by slaying that monster, but by understanding its language. The harpy's journey is our own, a map from terror to meaning. We have traced them from their birth in the primordial marriage of sea and sky, through their role as relentless enforcers upon the prophet Phineus, to their shadowy guardianship at the gates of death. We have seen them mirrored in the storm spirits of other cultures, and most importantly, we have found their reflection in the sudden squalls of our own inner lives. They are not mere beasts, but complex esoteric symbols. They are the sudden karma that enforces cosmic law, the brutal harrower that purifies the soul, the shadow that claws from within when we betray our own truth, and the fierce protector that guards the deepest mysteries from those who would cheapen them. To unmask the harpy is to perform the most courageous act of perception. It is to look at the sudden disaster, the shocking loss, the spoiled opportunity in your life, and ask not, why is this happening to me, but what sacred law have I forgotten? It is to see the divine justice, or the necessary purge, in the very event that feels most like senseless cruelty. The storm is not random. It arrives when the air has grown too still with complacency, when the foundation has quietly rotted, when the soul has been feeding on illusions. The harpy is the universe's most severe and urgent method of course correction. So now, with this map in hand, the final question turns inward, quiet and unavoidable. Where in your life might a harpy be trying to get your attention? Is it in the relentless anxiety that snatches your peace every night? Is it in the relationship that suddenly soured, leaving a bitter taste where sweetness once was? Is it in the career setback that defiled your sense of purpose? Look there, not with fear, but with the curiosity of an initiate. That shriek is a message. Those talons are pointing at something that needs to be released. That foulness is the sign of a truth you have been refusing to digest. I invite you to share your insights in the comments below. Tell us about your personal harpy encounters. What did they snatch away? And what truth did their storm force you to see? This is how we build a community of understanding, turning ancient terror into shared wisdom. And as you reflect, hold this final image. The last peal of thunder echoes into silence. The wind, once a howling fury, gentles to a breeze. The dark clouds part, and a clean, washed light falls upon a landscape that is undeniably changed. Some old trees are down, but the view is now clear to a distant horizon you never knew was there. This is the peace after integration, the calm that follows the harrowing. It is the landscape of a soul that has faced the storm, heard its message, and made its pact. The harpy has not been killed. It has simply returned to its islands, a sentinel in the distance, its wings stilled because you have finally learned to listen.